with weather, but not always like that. I don't think you'll ever see every year alike. But on the whole, you've stayed with it through thick and thin.
Portagrave is a very archetype and model of the Newfoundland outport. Its history is a mirror of the ebb and flow of hundreds of other coastal settlements all over the island. It's been a little better than 10 years since the close of the cod fishery. The sight of a few salt fish today is more a wonder than a commonplace, but Portagrave has done better than a lot of the outports since the historic shock of the moratorium. Portagrave was, in some ways, more ready to pick up on the crab fishery at a time when American and Japanese markets were paying a very good price for crab. And it could draw on itself as a community. Portagrave fishermen are very much a community and have a history of adaptation in tough times, a willingness to do what's necessary just to keep going.
When I was start fishing first, well, all boats were taken off in the winter, none left out in the harbour like you see now. Everyone had to help one another. You had to put a boat out to launch it or to take it off. Everyone would go around door to door and look for someone to men to come together, and you had to take the boat off. Sometimes you wouldn't go, you got a whole man or someone would go aboard and sing the polka.
Sing the what?
Sing the polka. That's what was called then.
What was that?
Well, they'd want to do that, so you'd get in the hall, and I don't remember the words they'd sing, you know, but then they all went together.
What were the words?
Well, they said, and it's so my jolly polka, let us haul this heavy motor. And it's so my jolly polka, all by us all. Well, then if she didn't go then, that was it. She had to go then. So that needs cooperation. So you can end that down to the day. In a harbour like Portagrave, you still need cooperation, see?
Metropolitan Portagrave is actually a string of communities that make up the whole area. And they are Ship Cove, Blow Me Down, and Hibbs Hole, which is now known by the more demure Hibbs Cove. And finally, what of the name Portagrave itself? Well, get rid of the gloomy associations. The grave in this context is not the sad churchyard plot, but it's a French term for a shingly or pebbly beach. It was the level beaches on which fish could be prepared that drew the fishing fleets in those long ago early days. The lighting of the boats in the fleet at Christmas time has caught on, as they say. It's a seasonal gesture, to be sure, but it is just as much another way of saying that after a mere 500 years, it's a little early yet to give up on a good thing. Portagrave is in it for the long haul.
And that's what the lights look like now. Spectacular here in Portagrave. Rex Murphy joins us right here on the dock. You know, I don't want to dwell on the lights forever, but what we saw just in our drive tonight from Bay Roberts here, the contests that go on between the communities around here for better lighting every year.
Well, Bay Roberts, as we did see, Bay Roberts started theirs, I think, about a year earlier, Festival of Lights, and then down here, one person drapes one set of lights over one boat, and it's like a small contagion. And the houses tonight, before we got to the boats, Portagrave is probably one of the best lit places in the country tonight.
Now, you know, the harbor master made a good point, and it was one of the arguments he used to get us here, was that television, the media in general, has focused, you know, for a lot of good reasons, on the difficulties in the fishery. Tonight's story, your story, underlines that there are exceptions, and it kind of plays out a theme that's happening in many parts of the country on other issues as well.
No, it's very true. We do paint with a broad brush. I'm the deepest cynic in the land. I've done stories that are here, and they are bleak, and they are hard. But it is very, more than useful. It's edifying and it's cheerful to find a place like Portagrave that draws on a history of resourcefulness, adaptation. These guys, as I said in the piece, you know, they're proud of their boats. Well, they're also proud of where they are. They were ready when the moratorium came in a way that other places weren't. And there are other places in Newfoundland like this, but it's nice to see that it isn't all one color, and that there are either isolations or exceptions or beacons. And Portagrave, in its cooperative effort, in its long, long history of dealing with hardships, and we come here tonight, the quality of these boats, the quality of the town life, the pride that goes into lighting these things. I found when I did the piece, one thing I'd like to say, so the older gentleman in the piece is Vern Petton, and when I was watching the piece myself, he's so damn cheerful. And in a sense, Portagrave is a cheerful emblem of the whole Newfoundland.
You know, in a way, it's like there is a crisis on the family farm. There's no doubt about that. but there's not a crisis on every family farm.
The analogy is extremely good. It's the farmers who seem to know more about the fishermen and vice versa. And yes, there is a crisis on the family farm, and there is a crisis in Newfoundland. But there are these intermittent places where people have found another way to deal. The hope isn't drained out of people. People have pride in place in this country, whether it's the East Coast or the prairies. And it's that fiber of pride that basically gives people the strength to go on. Like, again, the end of the piece. These guys are in it for the long haul.
Good to talk to you as always, Rex.
It's cheerful to see you, too, by the way.
It's
Look at
great
all those
here.
lights behind you.
Our next story comes from another seaside town, not that far from here. Brigus was the home of Captain Bob Bartlett, a seafaring hero, the navigator on Perry's 1909 expedition to the North Pole. But we were drawn there by a story about a struggle to protect and preserve a landmark church. Doug Leto has the story.
St. George's has welcomed worshippers for 127 years. From high atop Jane's Hill in Brigus, it's been a beacon for returning sailors, including the town's most famous son, Arctic explorer Captain Bob Bartlett. But soon St. George's will close. The Anglican Church has the building for sale.
The building itself would have issues. Accessibility is one thing. The difficulty in heating the building. In September of this year, the actual number that supported this church, during this particular church, during this year was 35 families. And the numbers are still going down.
It sounded like a simple enough problem.
On the National, Road Stories. Well, that's the National for this Monday night. I'm Peter Mansbridge in Port de Grave. We'd like to thank everyone in Newfoundland and Labrador who shared their stories with us tonight, especially those of you here in Port de Grave who made us feel so welcome, and our colleagues at CBC St. John's who made it all possible. We're going to leave you tonight with some music from their annual Christmas Carol performance. Thanks for watching tonight.